question we attempted to answer in our experiment was, when asked about tuition, does the power of losing affect UVic students' responses? We tested the power of losing using 2 of the 3 dimensions: loss, lost language, and losing to the competition, as well as losing the chance to pay nothing. According to social psychology, people who are faced with a financial decision are more likely to choose the option that is worded in a way that implies they will gain money and has the phrase free.
We tested the UVic student population of first and second year students. We used tuition as the subject of the question we were asking because it's a universal factor that each student encounters. We decided to use the survey questions as our method because it was an effective way to determine whether or not the wording of a question, lost language, would be a factor in the outcome of it. The idea was to ask 12 random people the pre-established survey questions.
When testing the first dimension, loss, lost language, and losing to competition, we expected that when the question was worded in a way that the projected outcome would be directly beneficial to them, they would be more likely to say yes. In comparison, when it was worded using lost language, the participant would say no. When testing the second dimension, losing the chance to pay nothing, we expected that the participant was more likely to choose the option that used the word free, because the word free appears to be the best option solely because the participant does not have to give anything up.
We chose to survey 60 first and second year students at the University of Victoria. To ensure that the questions were consistent for all participants, we used the same sentence each time. Due to the nature of our survey questions, a control group of people was not necessary. The consistency of the questions asked was considered to be a control group. To test the first dimension, we asked 2 questions with the same scenario. The scenario was, the registrar is offering a new payment plan where you have a chance of getting all your tuition back at the end of your degree. We asked one sample group, would you pay all 4 years of tuition upfront if you had a 60% chance of getting it all back? And we asked the other sample group, would you pay all 4 years of tuition upfront if you had a 40% chance of not getting it back? To test the second dimension, we asked one question. Would you rather have 1 semester free or only pay 40% for the next 2 semesters of your tuition?
This experiment had limitations on testing the hypothesis correctly. We only asked 20 subjects each for the questions that we used to test. This is not a significant amount of people to get data from. We also didn't consider whether or not the students were on scholarship. If the students were on scholarship, the universal similarity of paying tuition would not apply to them. The original goal of our experiment was to create 4 questions to test each dimension of the power of losing. In the end, we only tested 2 of these dimensions. For the third dimension, power of limited time, we decided against gathering data. This was because we didn't have the resources to gather data properly. We could not accurately determine when the students paid tuition because we don't have access to that information. Also, reviewing the experiment further, we concluded that the power of limited time would not provide insightful feedback in this situation because there is always a deadline for tuition fees, so the coupons we proposed would not differ in functionality with different title frames. Finally, the contrast between the 2 options proposed in the question would not be sufficient for the surveyee to make an informed decision based on the concepts we're testing. The fourth question was to test the power of limited time. We would have asked the participants if they would rather have A, a $250 tuition voucher that you can use for the first semester, and B, a $250 tuition voucher you can use for both first or second semester. Our hypothesis for this question was going to be A, would be used more. Because we decided not to test the third dimension, we increased our sample size to 20 people per question.
Overall, we found that our results supported our hypothesis for each question. For question 1A, 85% of the group said yes to the question we asked with no lost language. For question 1B, only 50% of participants said yes to the question with lost language. For question 2, 55% said they would choose 1 semester free, while 45% said they would choose only paying 40% of your tuition for 2 semesters. We expected to see that more people would say yes to a 60% chance of getting tuition back rather than having a 40% chance of not getting it back. Because of the change in language, people are more likely to select the option that stated they would have a chance of gaining something rather than losing it, or in our case, not getting it back. Although we had more people select having a semester free of tuition over only paying 40% for both semesters, we were surprised to see the small gap between the 2. People are much more inclined to select a free option because it seems like the best option and they don't have to give up or pay anything, even if another option is a better deal.
Overall, this experiment was able to successfully test two of the three dimensions of the power of losing, and the data we collected supported our hypothesis.